The path of the chosen one is rarely an easy one. From the very beginning, life seems to unfold in a way that separates them from the crowd. While others blend in effortlessly, the chosen one often finds themselves feeling out of place, misunderstood, and even targeted for reasons they can't always explain. This isn't by accident, it's part of a higher design. The rejection they face is not because they are weak or unworthy, but because their spirit carries a frequency that unsettles the comfort zones of others. The chosen one walks into a room and unknowingly challenges the very energy of the space. People may sense something different, an aura, a quiet strength, a sense of purpose that hasn't even been fully realized yet. And because most people fear what they don't understand, the chosen one is often rejected, mocked, or excluded. But that rejection is a form of redirection, pulling them away from the noise so they can hear the voice within. That period of isolation becomes sacred. It is in the quiet moments, away from the distractions and opinions of others, that the chosen one begins to hear divine instruction. When friends disappear, when family doesn't understand, when society overlooks them, the chosen one is left with only one source of guidance, their own inner voice, fueled by something much greater than logic. They are being prepared in the shadows, developed in silence, molded through adversity. The rejection becomes a refining fire, burning away the need for external validation and strengthening their connection with a higher power. The very people who turn their backs become the catalysts for deeper awakening. Their isolation becomes the training ground for resilience, clarity, and spiritual alignment. The chosen one learns to trust themselves, to hear what others cannot hear, and to see beyond what's on the surface. People often think rejection is a sign of failure, but for the chosen one, it's confirmation. It's evidence that they are not meant to follow the crowd or take the easy path. Their assignment is different. Their energy is rare. Their mission requires a depth of understanding and self-trust that can only be developed through solitude. When you are constantly surrounded by noise, it's hard to distinguish your thoughts from the world's. But when everything falls away, the chosen one begins to recognize the sacredness of their detour. The world's no becomes heaven's yes. What looked like a breakdown was actually a breakthrough in disguise. Their loneliness becomes their lighthouse, guiding them into realms others are too afraid to explore. The rejection from others is often a reaction to the chosen one's light. That light exposes what people don't want to see in themselves. It calls out hypocrisy, challenges systems, and rattles the foundations of false security. Those who are not ready to evolve feel threatened by this energy. They may respond with jealousy, criticism, or cold silence. But what they're really doing is projecting their fear of transformation. The chosen one serves as a mirror, showing people who they could become if they were willing to break their own chains. That mirror is uncomfortable for those who want to stay asleep. And so, they push the chosen one away. They whisper behind their back. They twist narratives to make the chosen one look arrogant, unstable, or rebellious. But what's really happening is spiritual resistance to divine truth. This is why the chosen one must become comfortable with being misunderstood. They must learn to walk without applause, to trust without evidence, to believe in their purpose even when there's no confirmation. Because their calling isn't given to the crowd, it's whispered in the quiet to the soul, and that whisper is louder than the noise of rejection. What feels like abandonment is actually alignment. The people who leave are making space for those who are meant to walk the next phase of the journey. The doors that close are redirecting them to gates that lead to destiny. The betrayal they experience is building discernment. The silence from others is cultivating strength. In time, the very qualities that caused others to reject the chosen one become the reasons they are later respected. When the world finally wakes up to the energy they carry, to the truth in their words, to the purity of their mission, the narrative changes. Suddenly, the ones who were silent want to listen, the ones who doubted now admire. But by then, the chosen one has already transcended the need for validation. They've walked through fire and come out refined. They've cried prayers that words could never capture. They've wrestled with identity, purpose, and pain, and emerged with a quiet confidence that cannot be faked. The scars they carry are sacred. They tell a story of divine transformation, so when the recognition comes, it's not needed. It's just a reflection of the internal work that was already done in the dark. The chosen one doesn't seek revenge or demand apologies. They operate from a place of spiritual maturity. Their focus is on the mission, not the mess. They understand that the rejection was never personal. It was spiritual. And because they've risen above it, they now move with a clarity and authority that can only come from walking through rejection with grace. The isolation taught them how to lead without followers, how to love without conditions, how to believe without evidence. They have become a lighthouse for others who are still finding their way through the storm. Stepping into your power as the chosen one is not something that happens in a single moment. It is a series of soul-level decisions, spiritual confrontations, and internal awakenings that force you to rise when everything around you tells you to stay down. Most people talk about power as if it's something you earn externally, like wealth or fame, but true power, the kind that comes from divine alignment, doesn't come from anything outside of you. It's birthed in the fire of adversity, in the crushing weight of self. Discovery, in the moments when you realize that you can no longer betray who you really are just to make others comfortable. That's where the chosen one begins to step into their power. Not by force, but by revelation. You suddenly realize that playing small is no longer an option because the cost of silence is too great. The people around you may not be ready for who you're becoming, but the calling on your life won't let you stay where you've been. There's an inner knowing that won't go away, a pull on your spirit that keeps calling you deeper. You begin to recognize that every time you dim your light, you feel sick in your spirit. Every time you suppress your truth to avoid conflict, your soul feels smaller. And eventually you reach a breaking point, a spiritual crossroads, where you choose to be fully, unapologetically yourself, regardless of who claps or who criticizes. That's the moment you start to step into your power. It's not loud or dramatic. It's quiet, grounded, and undeniable. It feels like coming home to a version of yourself you always knew existed but were too afraid to become. The fear doesn't disappear overnight. The doubt doesn't magically vanish, but something shifts. You stop waiting for permission to exist. You stop needing validation to believe in your gift. You stop shrinking yourself to protect fragile egos that were never meant to hold your truth in the first place. When you embrace your divine identity, it's not about ego, it's about authenticity. You're not trying to prove you're better than anyone. You're just tired of pretending you're less. The masks come off. The filters fade. You start speaking differently, moving differently, making choices based on purpose, not people. Pleasing. You become intentional with your time, your words, your energy. You realize that not everyone deserves access to your presence, and that protecting your peace is not selfish. It's sacred. You begin to attract a different kind of energy. Some people will be inspired by your growth. Others will be intimidated, but you no longer shift to fit their comfort. You were not created to be palatable. You were created to be powerful. Power in its purest form is deeply spiritual. It's not about control, it's about alignment. When the chosen one steps into power, they start to feel a divine rhythm to life. Things begin to unfold that can't be explained by logic. Synchronicities appear, doors open, the right people show up. But so do the attacks. The higher you rise, the more you become a target for spiritual resistance. That's why stepping into your power is not a trend, it's warfare. It requires discernment, boundaries, and unwavering faith. The enemy doesn't fight those who pose no threat. So when everything starts to come against you, that's not a sign to quit. It's confirmation that your light is disrupting darkness. You also begin to notice the spiritual weight of your words. When you speak, people listen differently. Your presence shifts atmospheres, your intuition sharpens, you start to hear the unspoken, you feel the unseen, your dreams become clearer, your sense of timing becomes divine. You begin to operate with clarity, not chaos, and you realize that the same people who once dismissed you are now watching in silence. Some are hoping you fail, Some are learning from you in secret, but you're no longer moved by applause or silence. You've learned that true power is consistent, not performative. It's rooted in purpose, not popularity. And as you walk in this new level of identity, you start to inspire others, not by preaching, but by existing fully as yourself. The journey is not without pain. There will be moments when your growth triggers others. You'll lose connections you thought were permanent. People will misinterpret your confidence as arrogance. But the truth is, they're not reacting to your power. They're reacting to their own unhealed wounds. You have simply become the mirror they didn't ask for, but your role is not to fix or soften yourself for their sake. Your role is to remain faithful to the assignment, because when you shrink, you rob the world of your medicine. You were not chosen to conform, you were chosen to transform, and every time you lean into that calling, you reclaim a piece of yourself that was lost to fear, doubt, and conditioning. You start setting standards, not out of pride, but out of wisdom. You stop explaining your worth to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You trust the energy you feel, not just the words you hear. You honor your intuition, even when it contradicts logic. You no longer beg for seats at tables you were meant to replace. You build your own. You understand that power doesn't mean dominating others. It means walking in truth so unapologetically that it gives others permission to do the same. You become a living example of what happens when someone fully owns their light, their pain, their gift, and their journey. You no longer fear rejection because you've learned that what's meant for you doesn't require you to hide who you are. There is something profoundly unsettling to others when a person walks in full spiritual awareness. When you're the chosen one, your very presence becomes a disruption to those who have built their lives around illusions, control, and manipulation. Your spiritual radar, the sensitivity you've developed over years of hardship, betrayal, and inner healing, becomes a threat to those who operate from ego, deceit, and fear. It's not because you're doing anything deliberately to expose them. It's simply because you exist in truth, and truth naturally reveals what is false. This is why, as you grow in spiritual clarity, you will notice people becoming uncomfortable around you. They may act distant, defensive, or even hostile, not because of what you said or did, but because of what your energy reflects back to them. You carry a light they've been trying to avoid. You hear what's not said. You see through masks. You feel energy shifts in a room without anyone speaking a word. This level of awareness is not something that can be faked. It comes through surviving deep emotional pain, facing your shadows, and choosing growth over comfort again and again. The world teaches people to numb, to distract, to wear masks, but your journey required you to strip everything down, to question everything you were told, to rebuild yourself from the inside out. That process didn't just give you strength, it gave you vision. A vision that's rooted not in fantasy or pride, but in a grounded, piercing truth that cuts through illusion like a sword, and that sword makes people nervous, especially those who benefit from keeping others confused, distracted, and asleep. They sense your clarity, and it exposes their manipulation. They feel your discernment, and it weakens their control. They recognize your elevation, and it highlights their stagnation. Your spiritual radar is not just a gift, it's a divine tool. You pick up on subtle energies that most ignore. You notice contradictions in people's words and actions. You feel when something isn't aligned, even when everything looks perfect on the surface. And because you don't play along with facades, people who rely on deception can't stand to be around you for long. It's not that you're judging them, it's that your frequency naturally convicts them. You carry a vibration of truth that exposes what's hidden. You can walk into a situation and sense motives before they manifest. You can meet someone and intuitively feel their true nature, no matter what front they put up. This insight is uncomfortable for those who are used to controlling narratives. They can't manipulate someone who sees through them. As a result, many of them will label you as too intense, too sensitive, or too spiritual. They'll try to discredit you to others. They may mock your beliefs, downplay your intuition, or act like you're imagining things. But deep down, they know you see what they're trying to hide. They're not reacting to you. They're reacting to being seen. They've spent so much time hiding from themselves that being in the presence of someone who is spiritually awake feels threatening. You reflect what they're running from, and rather than confront their own shadows, they project their discomfort onto you. This is why spiritual warfare often begins the moment you step into awareness. It's not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's subtle. A change in someone's tone, a sudden shift in energy, a door that mysteriously closes without explanation. You begin to realize that your elevation has consequences. As your light grows, so does the resistance. But instead of being afraid, you become more discerning. You stop explaining your intuition to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You stop doubting what you feel just because others can't see it. You start honoring your inner knowing as the highest authority in your life. That's when true power begins to emerge. You're no longer manipulated by sweet words or false promises. You sense energy first, you check vibration before validation, you listen to silence more than speech. This terrifies those who have been using charm to deceive and power to control. They realize they can't hide from someone who's spiritually awake. And in their fear, they may try to silence you, discredit you, or isolate you. But isolation is not punishment for the chosen one. It's preparation. In the solitude, you hear more clearly. You strengthen your intuition. You sharpen your discernment. You learn to move in silence and let your energy speak. Your spiritual radar becomes even more precise. You begin to see through not just people, but entire systems. You notice how energy is manipulated in relationships, workplaces, even spiritual communities. You start recognizing how trauma is used to keep people small, how fear is used to control, how shame is used to silence, and rather than getting angry or bitter, you become wiser. You don't fight every battle. You choose which ones are aligned. You conserve your energy for what matters. You realize that not every attack deserves a response. Some things fall away simply because your frequency has changed. Your presence becomes an act of spiritual rebellion. Just by standing in your truth, you're challenging centuries of programming. Just by trusting your inner voice, you're breaking cycles of dependence. Just by being real, you're dismantling illusions. And though it may be lonely at times, you know you're not alone. The divine walks with you. The ancestors whisper through you. The higher realms support you. You are guided not by ego, but by vision. And because of that, you can't be controlled. You can't be fooled. You can't be manipulated. Your radar is always on, and what it detects is not always easy to accept, but it's always real. And in a world that thrives on deception, being real is revolutionary. Everything you've endured, the rejection, the isolation, the confusion, the silent battles, was not without purpose. You weren't being punished, you were being prepared. The fire you walked through didn't destroy you, it refined you. The pain you carried wasn't a weight, it was a doorway. And now, you're stepping fully into the identity you were always destined to embody. You are not average, and your path will never look like everyone else's. You are the chosen one. Your spiritual radar, your inner knowing, your divine clarity, they are not burdens. They are sacred gifts that were placed within you for a higher mission. You don't need the world's validation when you've already been divinely approved. The world may not understand you, but the right people will feel you. And the time to stop hiding, shrinking, or guessing has passed. This is your era of embodiment. Your voice, your presence, your story, and your power are needed now more than ever. Thank you for walking this journey with me. If this message resonated with your soul, it's not by accident. You were meant to hear this. Never forget who you are, and never apologize for becoming who you were created to be. Stay strong, stay grounded, and stay aligned. Until next time, take care of your energy, walk boldly in your light, and remember, your power is no joke. Thank you and goodbye.